Hello DevOps people out there, I'm Jochen. Welcome to my live stream. Today I'm going to build a chef cookbook that runs and configures a DNS server. It's not that there aren't any DNS cookbooks out there on GitHub and other sources, but many of them are for a local DNS resolver like DNS Mask. Some are for specific cloud DNS services like Amazon Route 53 or DNS Simple. And some are just too basic because they only install the DNS service but leave out the more important thing, which is configure the DNS zones with all the DNS records we'd like to serve. For example, there actually is a NSD cookbook, which is the DNS server that I'm interested in, but it doesn't do much more at the moment, at least, than simply writing a very basic zone template that just has an entry for the DNS servers themselves. So what we are missing completely here is the part that gathers all the DNS records and writes them into the DNS configuration. Hi Marcus, welcome to the stream. So what I'll do is think of a kind of a design how we could go about this. I don't have a plan that I have prepared, so let's see how this goes. But I think letting you take part in my thought processes will be much more interesting than last week's watch Jochen replace variable names all over the place. I only realized after last week's session that that was poor planning on my behalf. The most interesting part, creating the class that replaced all these scattered variables, was maybe 20% of my live stream, and after that it was just editing stuff, and even I found it pretty boring, so I apologize. That's a lesson I still need to learn, how to curate the right content for this live stream. So I hope this live stream today will be much more interesting to you, because not only will you see how I'm going to build a cookbook, but also the thought processes that went into it. Yeah, and if you're watching live, just give me a shout in the chat room so I see who's there. And if you have any questions, if you have any feedback, suggestions, please simply ping me and I'll try to respond as quickly as possible. Okay, so there are many ways we could tackle this. And I think it would be a good idea to have a cookbook that does all the basic stuff, like installing the service, doing basic configuration, so on which IP address is the DNS server supposed to listen on. Maybe later add the distinction between master and slave DNS servers, although I don't like this master-slave distinction. It's common terminology, unfortunately. And the main thing, how do we get our DNS records, all these A records and CNAME records, NS records, SPF records, which is the thing that we are most interested at the moment at Freistyle IT. How do we get them in there? I think I'll take the same approach that some of the other DNS cookbooks out there took, namely offering new chef resources for DNS records, and that way building an internal list of DNS records that then get written in the end. And since we are in the open source space, I might even fork the NSD cookbook that Alexander built, and
I don't know that one.
So you don't, Alexa? Okay. It's time to learn it then. Sorry for that. Yeah, okay, lost my train of thought. Yeah, I might simply fork this cookbook, so I'll be able to send a pull request later, and we'll see what Alexander thinks of it. If he isn't inclined to merge our changes, we can still maintain our own version. So, that being said, why not start with doing exactly this and creating a fork? Here we go. And I'll change the name to our naming schema, which is most of the time service-freistyle, our company name. So if we need to maintain it ourselves, it's under our own name and there is no ambiguity. And yeah, just as I see these commit dates that this cookbook doesn't have any practical functionality, apparently, isn't a dig on his work. It's pretty new, so it's perfectly fair to not have it in a production state. Quite the opposite. Kudos to Alexander for releasing it that early. It enables me to build on what he already had built. Okie dokie. So what I'm going to do is clone this cookbook as a separate cookbook. Although we have our own monolithic chef repository where all our cookbooks reside, in this case I need to be able to push and pull separately to be able to do a pull request. So I'll have to see how we'll consolidate that afterwards. But that's nothing I'd like to deal with right now. So let's go back to projects and do my clone here. And we have our NSD cookbook. Does it have tests yet? No, it does not. Okay, that's something we might need to do as well. But let's start with a kitchen file, because I'd like to be able to at least see it converge. And by the way, yeah, I'm nursing a bit of a cold again. I hope it's not too distracting. Yeah. So let's add a basic kitchen file, and I'll be able to copy that from our template cookbook. Oh, it's already a vagrant based kitchen YAML, so I'll have to copy, see if our template cookbook also offers a document file. Hey, too many Hannas. Yes, I do still live in Ireland. I'm based a bit south of Dublin, where we had snow today, which is quite unusual. What I really like about this part of Ireland in the east is that the temperatures are quite moderate, so they basically range between 2 degrees in winter and 25 degrees in summer, but that's already considered a heat wave, I guess. And we seldom see snow, and today there has been quite a bunch of snowflakes, and I guess down south in the Wicklow Mountains there will even be snow that stays on the ground. And we'll see what that does to traffic, but yeah, I'm quite happy that we don't have the harsh winters and the scorching summers that we had back in Germany. The beast from the east. Yeah, that might be the case. I actually don't know where this cold front came from, but yeah, it might be exactly that. Okie dokie, so there is no kitchen docken.yaml, so I'll steal that from another cookbook. Our PHP cookbook should have a kitchen. Oh, it doesn't. Then let's take the Fry Stew Box cookbook. Oh. I think it shouldn't be named kitchen.docken.yaml. Makes things a bit easier to read. Okay. And I can use all these. I think we'll run the DNS server on Ubuntu 16, so let's use that. We won't need any specific things, I guess. And let's start with a default suite that simply uses the NSD Fry Stew default. Hey, what's with the backticks here? Okay, now I see that changing the cookbook name might be a mistake in terms of pull request, because we don't want to introduce our own cookbook name into the original cookbook. On the other hand, well, let's keep it that way, and let's cross that bridge when we reach it. So, that should be enough to run the cookbook, right? And Marcus already confirmed that common use is with the dot, so I'll use this as my standard test kitchen setup and see if kitchen list works. Yep. So let's see what happens. Where are you from, Too Many Hannahs? Oh, that's brilliant. So I guess we must have met already. Since you seem to know that I'm not originally from Ireland, but from Germany. Oopsie doopsie. NSD Freistyle is not existing. Why isn't it? It's my local. Oh. I have to change metadata, RB, and all that stuff. Poop. Nope, not doing it. I'll rename the cookbook, and if my later pull request doesn't work, I'll change. I'll appropriate it. Or should I? Yep. Let's keep the open source spirit alive. It's NSD cookbook. Well, Lucan was the place to be when we moved from Germany. But back in 2013, it was the place where many people moved to, and we even considered going there as well. But in the end, the first school that confirmed that we have a place for our daughter was in Bray, so we decided to go there. Yeah, Marcus, I agree. We'll... Oops. Pressing all the wrong buttons today. Here we go. So... let's give it another try. No, it doesn't exist anymore. That's correct. That's exactly why I made this change. You know what? I think the reason why I mistype everything is because it's pretty cold at the moment. Thanks for the... yeah, exactly. Why is it still trying to run NSD FreeStyle? I'm confused. Didn't I save the file? I think I did. I didn't. Here we go. Nope. So let's try another destroy. Oh dear. That's the thing with doing it live. I know why. I had the editor open and the editor is still writing to the old file handle, which is not NSD cookbook, but NSD FreeStyle. That's why you don't rename your working directory. Now you're taking the piss, aren't you? NSD cookbook is not there. Maybe we need to install a bit more plumbing, like a Burks file. Hey, Oily Ball, how you doing? Welcome to the stream. Template, Burks file. Let's take a look at the Burks file. We will need this. That's the problems you run into if you are used to simply copying your working template and have to retrofit things into an existing cookbook. Oh, that's why the cookbook is named NSD. Only the repository was named NSD Cookbook. Okay, that explains things. Let me see if my heater is switched on. I'm really getting cold feet here. There is no default recipe. What recipe is there then? Oh, it's master and slave. Okay, let's work with the master cookbook then. Master recipe then. Slowly getting there. You're just a beginner of PHP and have an assignment from your teacher. And so you thought, well, let's get right onto it and watch a live stream on Twitch. You're my kind of guy. Or girl, don't know. Okay, that looks better. And yeah, work quite quickly. Which means that I'll have to think about my actual goal here. How do we teach this cookbook to write actual DNS records to the zone file? I'd say let's create a NSD record resource that takes all the details like record type, A, CNAME, NS, and so on, and writes it into some kind of internal collection, which in the end gets written as a zone file. How would this work in detail? So tell me, what's your assignment about? So we could add a NSD record resource to the cookbook that can be used in an application cookbook. So users of the cookbook could simply call NSD record for all the DNS records they need in a zone. And our own cookbook would collect all these records, and then we could have an NSD zone file resource that takes parts of the things we collected, namely the records for the particular zone we'd like to write, and write that into a file. That could be the right way to go. Yeah. So I'll have to learn how to create our own resources. That's a thing I've never done before. Colleagues on my team have, but yours truly hasn't yet. So, let's see how these LWRPs, lightweight resource providers, work. Luckily, there is a nice documentation on the Chef website. So we'll have to build a resource that has certain properties and certain methods. Most importantly, the action that a resource can execute. And then we'll need a provider that actually does all that stuff. So the resource file is mostly an interface definition, and the provider does all the internal stuff behind the scenes. Okie dokie, so what we'll need is, we need a resources directory. And we'll do a record.rb file, which will automatically be prefixed by the cookbook name, which conveniently is NSD, so it'll be NSD_record. And, well, it will have at least a name property. Where the Ruby type... okay, no. I think the name property is implicit, so let's see. Well, one property we'll have at least is the type of the DNS record, and the type is probably a Ruby string, and the default type will be A. Then we'll define a create action that does something, and I'm not sure if we even need another action. Now you're confusing me, Marcus. LWRP are old style. Aren't definitions old style? Or are they even older style? Has there been something new that I'm not aware of? Okie dokie. I thought what's named custom resources is basically lightweight resource and providers, but I might be mistaken. I'll follow this one in any case, because it says custom resources were introduced in Chef version 12.5 and are the preferred method, and that's I guess the way to go. Okay, so there is an action create, and that needs to do a few things. And we'll have another resource then, which will be named zone, or zone file, but well, in this context it can't be, it only can be a file, so I'll simply rename it zone for readability. Okay, so custom resources is actually even newer than LWRP, which I also haven't done, so good thing I haven't. So I'll skip another step. Yeah, so another file, resources zone.rb, and that one will have a create action, and we'll probably do something like, oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, I just realized LWRPs had separate definitions for the resource and for the provider, and now we've basically come full circle where the original out-of-the-box chef resources are again packed into the resource definition itself, making things a bit simpler, I guess, but probably more powerful than definitions were back in the day. Okay, nice. So we won't have a providers directory at all. This makes a lot of sense. Okay. Let's see. Let's build something basic. So I'll have a template that writes a zone file. I'll need to find out where to write it. So we'll write it somewhere, and it's then using the name attribute. Which we'll take from here. So the instance name property is a property that we can use as an resource property, but it'll be automatically superseded by the name we give the resource. So the template name will be something like instance name dot zone, and we'll have to fill in the blanks later. Okay. So what I'd like to achieve is that I can do something like this. NSD zone example.com do action create, and it'll write out the zone file. And the NSD record should work something like NSD record. Do we need names here? I don't know. Something like this. Do action create, which probably will be by default, and then type A, and then we'll have oops, cold fingers, something like this. So we'll probably have a property IP address also being a string with no sensible default value. Okay. Let's take care of the zone resource first. Because it's easy to write a file. And we can take a look at the master recipe, which already writes a zone file into zone dir, which again is a subdirectory of the conf dir. So I guess I'll steal this. Sorry, this might not actually be the thing you're looking for, since we are doing heavy infrastructure automation stuff here, and not some kind of application coding. But let me know how your assignment went. What we are doing at our company is web hosting for WordPress and Drupal, which are both PHP-based content management systems. So this is right in our wheelhouse, but not the thing I'm doing on stream. So all the best, and thanks for following. Okay, so yeah. Let's use what is ID then? It's NSD. Not sure why I would not hard code this here. Oh, no, I wanted to do the opposite. I wanted to adhere to the quote signs that Alexander used. So we'll probably say zone dir slash something something dot zone. Yeah, exactly this. And we'll have to use a template file. Oh, yeah, I guess we'll reuse the nsd.zone template. Okay. Yeah, I guess we could give this a try. Since this is going to be more of a library cookbook now, I'll have to add a test recipe to use these resources, which I'm going to add as a kind of private recipe for the time being. It should be in a separate test cookbook nested into this cookbook, but that'll require a lot of cut and pasting that I can do later. So let's simply create... I really can't type today. Let's simply do a resource test.rb file where we can directly call nsd zone example.com. But that should be it, basically. So let's see if we add this recipe to our run list. If it'll actually write a zone file. Well, it does not. Isn't it called resource test? Oh, it's underscore resource test. So, well, I've just left out a colon here. So, just to be clear, this is completely new to me, and I'm actually doing my first steps building custom resources. Sorry, Marcus, your comments get delayed. You're really trying to help me here, and probably are ripping your hair out. Don't. Yeah, there's some kind of that's supposed to be here. Well, that at least looks a bit better. Do we need to add the ERB? Yeah, we do. Oh, I like it when the error messages get more complex, because it means I haven't failed at the simple stuff anymore. Whoa, this looks pretty serious. So we need to define a few variables here, attributes, like master contact. Yeah, maybe I should take a look at the documentation if there is some stuff. So master needs to have an FQDN, an IP address. Not sure about that. Because I would expect that it at least uses the node's IP address by default, which would make testing much simpler. And a contact. So let's change our kitchen file to add these attributes. That's why I left this line in, so we can say, okay, master FQDN is, yeah, let's use ns1example.com. I leave out the IP address because I really don't want to have to define it explicitly, but let's define a contact as host master at example.com. And if we don't define any zones at this point, we might even be able to circumvent the original cookbook from writing a zone file that we don't need, because we are already creating it in our application recipe, in this case the resources test recipe. Okay, let's see. Okay, still breaking. It still doesn't work with master contact. So we'll have to debug how it gets it. It's node ID master contact. Oh yeah, I think I've simply, yeah, of course I left out the most important level in this hierarchy. Okay, still not working. Master contact is node ID, which probably is NSD again. Master contact. It still seems to be nil. Why is that? NSD master contact. Oh, of course, because it's not this recipe that breaks, it's my own. It's my own resource here. I need to provide the same kind of variables. So am I going to pass all that in as variables? Might not be the right thing to do to reuse this template, because it's built on different assumptions. But I'd like to see the cookbook at least working in some kind of sense. So I'll pass in what it needs, which, yeah, I see that from the variables that it's not what I actually need. Let's use our own template. Let's use something like resource zone.erb. And make it as simple as possible. That's better. So it wrote out etcd nsd zones example.com.zone, and I can only assume that it actually, okay, I will need the export, that it wrote out the one-liner. And it did. Okie dokie. Now, there's another thing I need to find out, because this zone file is supposed to have some kind of data. And it needs to iterate over this, so there must be something like this, add records, each do record, and then output something like record type, for example, and much more. So it should be INA IP address or something like that, but for simplicity's sake, let's just output the type at this point, and then the end. Of course we can, oops, do something like this, records, so this must be some kind of hash, an array of hashes basically, that has at least some kind of type. So let's say we have a record with an A type, and then next comes a record with a CNAME type, and that should result in these entries in the zone file. Which it obviously did not. It wrote empty lines. Why did it write empty lines? I'm passing in an array of pretty simple hashes, and okay, yeah, I'm using symbols, so I should make this a symbol as well. Okay, and now we have our output here. The thing is, hard coding this is easy, but this should be something like a collection that has at this point been built up by the NSD resources, NSD records resource. So how do we do global variables in Chef that, or how do I do a background data store that I can use during the converge run. So instead of a hard-coded array, this should be something like NSD record collection. Oh nice, we have a record collection. I haven't had a record collection in years, in decades basically. Okay. Actually, I don't have an idea at the moment, and I'll need to find out how this works, but first. Hey, Pyromorph! What do you mean, out? How do you know I was about to go out to take a leak? Because that's exactly what I'm doing right now, and then I'll find out how to store stuff during the converge run and use it in the end to write my zone file. So I'll be right back. Don't run away. We'll continue this after the break. See you later. And I'm back. Okay, well, it's probably easy to find out how to do this because there are cookbooks that take the same approach. For example, the DNS Simple cookbook that still follows the LWRP approach, as everyone knows. No, it doesn't actually. I'm afraid it uses a completely different approach, but let's take a look. Oh well, it's it's written in plain Ruby and simply uses the classes that are offered by Chef. But anyway, so we have the here the record. says DNS simple client zones all records. So this is a global variable, I guess. Hey Clark.io, thanks for following. How are you doing? Welcome to the stream. I just don't have the courage to simply introduce a global variable and be done with it, even though this might be exactly the way to go. Feels dirty. But that's the resource, defines all that kind of stuff, and then that's the record. And the only thing is that this seems to be some kind of class. It's not just a simple hash or something like that. But other than that, let's find out. There's nothing more than this libraries. Okay, they simply use their API gem, and that's so I should simply take a look further down. There is probably a DNS simple dot underscore client, or that's exactly what's defined in the other resource file, and it uses that to get all the zones and all the record of all the zones, and then they can modify that. In the end, DNS simple client is a method. Don't think it helps me in my case. Hey Mahuda Globo, how you doing? I hope I didn't botch your name. Okay, well, I can do a bit more research later, so let's simply assume we can use a global variable. NSD zone data, and we'll add a hash that uses the type property. So still we are going to use broken records in this broken records for testing, just with type, knowing well that we'll have to extend this later. So we'll add all this to NSD zone data, and in my zone resource I'll say, okay, NSD, oh, we have to say goodbye to the record collection. No, I'm not going to do that. I'll rename this NSD record collection. So if we first define a NSD record, oh, we'll have to actually at least tell it the zone to which it belongs. Well, we can, yeah, I think I'd like to do it this way: zone example.com and type A and IP address 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll have to add a zone property. Let's see if this will work at all. If not, I guess I'll have to do a bit more research, but let's see. No resource method or local variable named NSD record collection. Okay. Well, I have another idea. I guess in the end all these things are classes. So how about we make this an instance variable? Now, it's a different, if it is a class at all, it's going to be a different class than the zone I'm going to use it in. That's something I'll have to find out. How do we do global data stores in Chef? I could add a library function that does it for me. Let's see. Do we have a library directory yet? No, we don't. Resource collection. All our records will be in the resource collection. And we actually could iterate over it, filtering out all the DNS records and build it from there. So I wouldn't have to have my own storage. Huh. Let's see. Hmm. Store. Doing converge. Okay, that's something I'll have to find out. What I'm going to do, since we are running out of time, is at least write down a plan so that we know what to do. Research how to collect previously defined DNS record information. Iterate over zone records in NSD zone resource / template. Record collection via NSD record resource. Something like this. These need to be list items, so I'll get check marks. Here we go. Does make sense, doesn't it? Okay. So that's what we have to do, and one thing I'd like to add as well is add integration test. Okay, I think this will be the key to everything. If that's solved, doing the rest won't be much of an issue, I guess, because that's basic chef stuff like calling the NSD record resource a few times and then using these records to write the zone file via a normal chef template. And integration test shouldn't be an issue as well. So that's what I'm going to do. Probably in the meantime, and at the moment I'm planning to do this stuff then in my session on Thursday, so we can get this done before I have to leave for a conference. All right. I hope this was at least a bit interesting to you. And if you have any questions, if you have any feedback, I'll be happy to get anything you have to say. You can use Twitter or you can email me. I'm happy about everything that is constructive. And if there isn't anything else, as my colleague here tells me, see you next time. Cheers.